Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim Rochelle's. Today's episode 263, and today we have Martha on the podcast. How you doing, Martha?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to do this.
Me too.
So let's get started. Well, first of all, where are you from?
I live in central Illinois.
Central Illinois. Okay.
Yep, around Peoria. So
Okay. You like it there?
it's fine. Yeah, yeah, it's good. Most of our family, friends are here, but yeah,
You
I
grew up
would be
there?
okay with moving at some point. So
Is that where you're originally from?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, for a while I lived up in Chicago, the Chicago area in one of the suburbs, but then I ended up coming back down here. So
Okay. So let's talk about you and addiction and stuff. So let's start with your childhood. Tell me about growing up. How was that?
growing up was interesting. Like it was my mom, my dad, and me and my brother. I have a brother who's about 3 years younger than I am. And there was a lot of fighting amongst my parents, a lot of, I feel like it's not an unusual story anymore. Like the divorce, like they divorced when I was really young. I was in first grade. That was unusual back then.
Yeah.
It didn't happen very often. So, and we went to Catholic schools. We were raised in the Catholic Church. So like it was not, it was very unusual. My mom was one of the very few who is divorced of all the people all the families that we hung out with. So we didn't see our dad a lot. He was very, he was absent. He didn't really act like he cared. And when he did, it it was like it wasn't like true caring, if that makes sense. He was more it was more of a, oh, I get you every Thursday night and every other weekend thing because I have to. So and he was very I felt like I had to be perfect in order to earn his love. So at a very young age, I learned that I had to, like, I thought that I had to, like, get straight A's, be the perfect kid, like, do all of the right things that I thought were the right things to earn love. So, and it didn't work, but yeah.
I had unmuted myself. Sorry.
No,
Your parents stayed together or did they get divorced?
they got divorced.
At what age were you?
I was 7.
Okay, me too. My dad was my dad. My parents separated when I was 8.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you know how much that can suck.
Yeah, and they separated when I was even younger than that, and then he came back, and it happened like 2 or 3 times. And then I think one of the most courageous things I saw was my mom finally being like, that's it, I'm no more. And she is the one who filed for the divorce, which at the time I even had said it's about time. Like this back and forth thing wasn't working. And it's so interesting that a 6 and 7-year-old can like be like, okay, we're done with this merry-go-round. So, but yeah.
It's amazing sometimes how quickly children can grow up based on the situations around them.
Yes. And I think there was a lot of that too, because with my mom being a single mom, she was, working a lot, providing for us. And so like I kind of took over that, but I always had anyway, but I took over that like mothering place for my brother. Versus just us growing up, I was helping take care of him and stuff like that. So I think I grew up a lot quicker than I needed to. So yeah.
How was your relationship with your brother?
We actually got along really well, although when we got in fights, we got in some wicked fights. But I would say we were more of like a team than anything else. And even now we have a good relationship. So yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yes. Yeah. I'm grateful for that. I know. I mean, there's been hard times throughout the years, but yeah, we always tend to come back and figure it out. So that's been good.
So how was life in school and stuff? Did the divorce affect, how did the divorce affect you? That should be my first
Okay.
question.
Okay. So like I was glad he was out of the house because of all like the drama, the fighting, the chaos, but I think too I was also thinking that I did something wrong in the midst of it too. So I think that huh, like I know this answer and here I am. But it was hard because when I was, I mean, there were some incidences that were pretty bad and where I decided like we would go visit with him. There was always strange women around. Like he didn't really want to spend the time with us. So I got to a point when I was in around fifth grade, probably that 10 or 11-year-old age where I'm just like, I'm not going anymore. I'm not going. And of course, it was invoked like, well, you have to, it's visitation, have to, like to the point where I ended up, like, I remember I ended up hiding in the back of my closet and piled all this stuff on me so no one could find me because I'm like, I'm not going. Like, nope, not happening. So, um, like when, if, if you would have asked me that question like 10 years ago, I had been like, oh, I got through it fine. It was fine. But I think I had this sense like, oh, this is how, like there's no, like commitments don't really mean anything because I felt like um even like being like him being my parent, we were kind of just disregarded, just like whatever. And my brother and I were just pawns in a game, like for him to impress women and stuff like that. So that part of it was hard. And then I think too, like the part of seeing my mom struggle too, because we, she would have to say no to us on some stuff that we would see other kids doing and stuff like that. So I think, you know, and it's not that we had a rough, like we didn't go like without food and stuff like that. We just didn't have, we didn't have what everybody else had.
Yeah, no,
So
I know. Yeah, I feel this. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah. So, but I mean, school wise, I mean, I had friends like at school, like grade school wise was fine. Like it was the typical like girls are mean to girls, we would get in fights, like ridiculous stuff. But like overall, honestly, I think part of what helped me is we had, because I did like go through like a Catholic school and stuff, we had such a tight knit group of families that did help us in that situation versus shun us away because of like the divorce. And back then it wasn't accepted at all um in the Catholic Church. So we were lucky that we had like a lot of families that supported us versus, you know, didn't let their kids play with us and stuff like that. So yeah.
So, what was your first introduction ever to any type of drug or alcohol?
So growing up, my like neither of my parents really drank a lot, but like uncles and aunts and different family get-togethers, people would drink. And my uncle was always like sneaking drinks to me and my brother when we were younger, like, oh yeah, go ahead, you can have some drinks and stuff like that.
How
But like,
young?
how
How,
young? Probably eight or nine. Yeah, young.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And but like my like real first like really drinking wasn't until high school.
Do you remember what it felt like the first time you ever had a sip?
I just remember thinking like, oh, this is fun. So it didn't taste good. Like I thought, oh, this isn't good, but this is fun because I was getting away with something and being like sneaky.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
get a buzz at all?
Gosh. I don't remember. I don't remember that. I just remember the like thinking it was cool because, these adults that I admired and we're all having a good time were like letting us be in on it. And then it was like our fun little secret that we could, hide from my parents and hide from, and just, yeah, we could be like part of the group. So that's what it kind of turned into for me, is like, oh, it's part of the group. It's part of being cool. So, yeah.
Growing up, did you have a lot of friends that were into drugs and alcohol?
Not so through grade school, no, not really. In high school, most of the people that I was really close with were not drinking or doing drugs. But then like I started kind of running with another like group of friends who were drinking some, so I would drink with them a little bit. But interesting enough, when I was in high school, I was also part of something called Snowball, which was all like anti-drugs, anti-drinking. So
What is it, like a club?
it was like a club. Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. And we would do like retreats or whatever, like once a semester, just to show that you could have fun without drinking and stuff like that. So I thought, oh yeah, I'm never gonna drink. Like, no, I'm never gonna drink. And then my first like real experience was I went to go do some college tours my junior year and went with one of my friends, and we ended up at a college party and I started drinking and I got to the point where I got sick and I blacked out like right away. But I did it again the next weekend. So, yeah, and that was like my first introduction to like, oh, this is what it feels like to be able to say what I want to say and be able to act the way I want to act. And I felt like I just had this um it helped me feel empowered at the time. Even though
Yeah,
I
it
got
seems like
sick,
it seems like you feel like maybe the real you was coming out.
it did. Like I was able to be myself and not worry about what all these other people thought of me. Mhm.
How did that
Yeah.
feel? Was it
Invigorating, that's a huge
yeah.
word, but but it felt good because I wasn't having to, of course I wasn't thinking that at the time, but I wasn't having to put like these masks on and try to be everything to everybody else, and I didn't have to try to be perfect. Like it was like my release from having to try to be perfect all the time, having to always keep achieving and trying to do the next right thing. It was like this thing of like, oh, I can relax, I can have fun, and this is the way I can do it. So, yeah, yeah.
So did the drinking and partying affect your high school like grades and anything like that?
So, not high school, but then I went to college and I started drinking a lot.
What's
You
a
know,
lot?
yeah, it wasn't just weekends. It started like being in the evenings, and like the people I hung out with and stuff, like they partied and stuff with me, but not as much drinking as I was. So I just found other people to go drinking with during the week and stuff like that. And like I still like I graduated like from high school, like I graduated in the top of my class. Um, I got really good grades in that, but like in college I did okay, but not as well. If I wouldn't have like it was starting to affect my relationships with the people that I had had really close friendships with before. That was like the main thing that happened in college. And when I first, just jumping ahead just for a moment, when I first got sober, my whole thought process was it was college. Like it's just college. Everybody drinks. Like that was I thought. And then when I started looking at it a little bit more of like, oh my gosh, what consequences did I have? Did I hurt people? Like all these things. How often was I doing? I'm like, oh, I guess I did drink more than like whatever other people do. I just found myself people who would drink right along with me, so then I didn't feel like I was alone in it. So yeah. And I think too, for me, it was a huge social thing. So it was still that thing where I could drink. It helped me feel like I could fit in. It helped me feel like I could, be the cool kid and all of that kind of stuff. So it helped take me away from like all of the seriousness and always trying to get those goals. And, it was still that release for me of trying to be that perfect person all the time. So, but I got through college, and then I went to grad school actually right away. So it still didn't affect me that much. And then after my first year of grad school, I got married. And even like probably in that time, drinking was my main thing. And every once in a while I would smoke pot, but it would make me fall asleep. So I'm like, I don't want that. I want to stay up. So drinking was my main thing. And then my marriage ended after like less than 3 years. He had gotten really into drugs and going out and doing all this stuff. So then I didn't go out with him. I ended up going out with other people. And that's when I was in my mid-20s. I was introduced to cocaine. And then that was my very quick, like I fell in love with cocaine very quickly. And so it went from like using it occasionally to boom, using it every day, very, very fast, like within a few months. So yeah.
Let's talk about the cocaine.
Okay. What would you like?
So who was the first person to introduce you to it?
It was a guy that I liked,
Okay.
actually. Yep.
Did you
Sad to
feel
say I
pressured
was
at
still
all?
married.
Oh,
Didn't pressure, just it was him and a few other people were doing it, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to try it?" And I'm like, "Well, okay." And I did. And then it just, yeah. So that was the first time I did it. It was at a bar. And
was
yeah,
you going to the bathroom or something?
yeah,
I
yep,
remember those days.
yeah,
I worked in
yeah,
New York City for so long. So like after work or whatever, you just go to a bar in New York City. There's a bar in every block, and then get
yes.
some cocaine for some friends, go into the bathroom, drink. It would make you a little tired. Go get some cocaine to wake you back up. Drink, make you a little tired. Cocaine to raise you back up.
And then you could party all night long. Like that was the
Exactly.
thing. It's the same here. Like even though it's a smaller area, our bars are open to like 4 a.m.
Oh yeah.
So we could just go to the bar. I knew where to go. We could get some cocaine, and then same thing. We did the same thing. So yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember the worst was because I lived in New Jersey, and I would get so hammered that on the bus ride home, I would fall asleep and I would miss my stop. And then I would end up at the bus depot with the driver waking me up saying, "Dude, you're the last person on the bus. I'm at the depot now." And they would drive me at the last stop. And then I had to take a bus an hour back up north because
Oh my gosh.
I missed
Yeah.
my stop by over an hour.
See, it's crazy. Like, and we're just like, it's just life. Like, it's just at the time, it's normal. Like, whatever, we'll figure it out, right? We always did.
Oh, yeah. Always happened. So how did the cocaine use progress? Like, was it at first?
Right.
How often was it?
So at first, it was like a weekend type thing, or and then it was like a weekend type thing. If we were out partying and stuff like that. And it was always with a group of people because at the time I didn't know how to get it. I just knew that these people had it. We ended up um hanging out, and I even and I'm like during all this time I'm still married, and but it didn't matter. Then I was sleeping with other people. I was just doing really stupid stuff to like like that to, because I knew they had cocaine. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I get what I want. So, so it started like that. And then it started like creeping into the week. And then I was introduced later to smoking it. So more in crack cocaine form. And so that I was doing it that way. And like once I did that, it became like an everyday thing that I needed to get. So yeah, I was always chasing that, what I thought was like this euphoria at the time of like, oh my gosh, I feel really good. I can do anything type thing. So I was always like, okay, I need that again. Yeah,
So it ended up being a daily thing for you, huh?
it did. It
So at
did.
the time, were you still in school when the cocaine use started? 'Cause I know you said you were in grad
So
school.
I was in grad school. I had just graduated from grad school and started the job. At the time I was an audiologist and I was running the department at a hospital.
Was
So
that what
like,
for hearing?
yep, for hearing. I don't do that anymore. I lost my license because of my drug use. Um, but I would go out at night, drink and party and use, and then I would get hardly any sleep. So I'd come to work, I'd go into my office and I'd sleep underneath my desk.
No,
And then
you got caught.
yes. Huh?
Did you ever get caught?
Yes, I got caught. Yep. Yep. They knew. And I was starting to look terrible, like tired all the time. You know, that look where it's just like that emptiness. And I had gotten to know the people that I worked with really well before that time because I just happened to also like do my essentially my internship there. And then they offered me the position. And so I lost my job there. So then I decided, oh, well, I'm gonna while I was for a while between college and grad school, I had like 7 months off. So I went and worked at a daycare. So I'm like, oh, I'll just go back to the daycare. So I was a daycare teacher, through my worst part of my use. That's responsible, isn't it?
Yeah, as I say, were you using while at work?
I so I used to be like, I never used while I was at work, but I would go on my lunch break, go drive around, use, and come back. So yes, because I was high while I was working.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
is what it is. We do stupid things when we're on drugs.
Yes. Yes. And at the time when I did that, so I was working there and then I was also waitressing and bartending too. So I was working an average of about 80 some hours a week.
That's
And
a lot of hours.
it was, and it still was not enough. And at this point I had gotten divorced. I mean, I didn't come home one night because I was out partying and it just exploded with my now ex-husband. And it was messy. It was really messy. So yeah. But oh gosh, I got sidetracked. But yeah, so I went through that whole mess. I was high during all of that and working, so I had to work all those hours to try to find my own place to live, try to pay those bills, and a car, all those things. But then I would stop paying stuff because all that money I was making from those jobs was going straight into drinking and buying drugs. So
That's usually how it goes.
yep. And then it got to where it was it was mainly crack at that point, and I was um going to a not good place with one of my friends. Her and I would go to a very dangerous place to go get drugs. And
So you got into crack, you said?
yep, we would go to the crack houses. Yep.
Who introduced you to crack?
Gosh, the same people that I did cocaine with. It was like a group of, by that time it was just a couple of people at first when I first did it, but then like I had kind of gotten in with this group of people. We started hanging out at a certain bar. And like that's what like 80% of the people there were all, I mean, we all drank, but they were all doing cocaine, and then like some were doing crack. So then I ended up doing that with them.
What does
Yeah.
crack feel like?
Oh
I've never
gosh.
done crack.
It is so like for me, it was like when like for cocaine, like to snort cocaine, it like took a minute for it. Crack was like that instant moment of like feeling that energy, that like buzz.
So it felt
Yeah,
kind of like cocaine, just intensified.
it did. It was intensified. Yeah. Because with smoking it versus snorting it, it got into your system quicker.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's what it was for me. It's been a while. It's been a long while, but yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah,
It's good that's hard to remember.
yes. I'm like, gosh, yeah, but it's it was that was like my honestly once like I had a very quick decline, like going from cocaine to crack, and then I had a friend who was living out in California, so I went to go visit him, and around there, all they had was meth. So I did a 2 week binge on meth, which I thought, oh, I'll never do that. It's sad those things like as when I'm drinking a lot, I'm like, oh, I'll never do drugs. When I was doing coke, oh, I'm never gonna do this. And doing crack, it's like that insanity of like, oh no, I'm never gonna do that. And of course, that's what we could get. So that's what I was doing. So then when I came back home, my I didn't know where to get meth. So I was doing crack still. So like my drug use just went through the roof to where I ended up living out of my car. All I had were like a few sets of clothes and not much else. And it all happened like within about 2.5 years. I went from like the first time I tried Coke to living out of my car in about 2.5 years.
Wow, it
So
must be so. I've thought about that so much. Like, what if I ever happened if I was homeless and all types of things? I mean, it must have been hard living in a car.
I will say I did have like my parents were very supportive people. Like I could go there sometimes, but I didn't want to be there because they knew me well enough to know. And by this time, my mom had gotten remarried. They had gotten remarried when I was in high school to my stepdad, who I'm very close with. And so they knew, like they had called me out on a few things. I mean, just the craziness of like they found a bag of baking soda. So that way, I could cook down my cocaine to make crack with it. So because it took out all the cut from it, but they thought it was cocaine. So like they're sitting there with this bag thing, and I'm like, how stupid are you? That's not drugs. Just try it. When they confronted me with it, and I'm like, well, of course they thought it was drugs because of how I was acting. I mean, they're not that stupid, but they didn't want to turn me in. Like, so I didn't want to be around them. And so I
So you
just
were
tried to blame
basically it was
things.
by choice. You could say it was kind of by choice you were in your car in order to get high.
Yep, it was. It was. Yeah. Because if I would have chosen to stay with them, then I would have had to stop what I was doing.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
crazy the way our friggin' brains work when we're on drugs.
Yes. And thinking I had no choice. Like, this is my choice. Or not even my choice. This is what happened. But if I just do this, it's like survival mode in order to keep getting high.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
my cat likes you. This is the first time she's ever done this. Never once done this,
He's
but
so
nonetheless. So let's start talking about your recovery. What led to you saying, I've had enough of this shit. I need to get sober?
right. So I think it was not just like, I mean, it was just in a moment that I decided I can't do this anymore. But it was like all like the last few weeks leading up to it, the things that I had found myself doing, like, um, I don't suggest anybody do this. I don't even think they make it where you could do this anymore. But way back then, they had envelopes you could put in the ATM to make a deposit. So I would just put a blank envelope in and withdraw money out. like I was committing crimes. Like the bank was ready to throw me in jail because of it. And I was using all the time. Like I was missing work. I knew I was on the verge of getting fired from the daycare. Like all of this stuff happened. And I was working a shift at the bar on a Sunday night. We were getting ready to close. I did a shot of Jaeger. I sat in my car after work and I just sat and I'm like, I don't think I can freaking do this anymore. I didn't say freaking, but you know, I don't think I could do this anymore. And so I drove to my parents' house by this time it's like 1 a.m, drove to my parents' house, knocked on the door, started bawling, and I'm just like, I need help. I can't do this anymore. So for me, I think I was tired, I was exhausted, I was done with like the constant running, trying to catch my next high, like trying to figure out what to do. It's addicts, like we're such smart people that we figure out how to get what we need or how to get what we want.
Oh yeah,
And
that was one of the things that amazed me is when I went to rehab, some of the most
yeah,
intelligent people I've ever met.
yeah. And I just think, holy crud, I was just tired of trying to figure it out all the time and playing the game. And I couldn't remember all the lies I had told anymore. And so I think I was just at that point of just exhaustion that I knew I needed to do something different. But going to rehab for me, in my mind, was I'm going to start using drugs. I'm going to stop using drugs, but I'll be able to manage my drinking. Like that was my thought when I was
Ah,
first going to go into rehab. I'm like, I'm just going to learn how to not use, but I'll still be able to drink. And then, of course, going through rehab, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess not.
yeah, I can't do anything.
Yep, I can't do any of it. Damn it. So, um, actually, so I ended up sleeping at my parents. I slept for 2 days straight. In the interim, while I was doing that, they were calling around to different rehab centers to see where I could get into. No one had a bed for a few days, so I pretty much like um
White knuckled it.
white knuckled it for a few days. But the interesting thing was I went into work at the daycare I was going in to tell them what was going on and that I was going to go to rehab and stuff. So I went in to go work, had a meeting with them, told them, and they said if I would not have come to them and told them that day, they were planning on firing me that day. And then while I was in the class, they actually let me work, which is crazy too. While I was in the classroom, my car got repossessed while I was there. So I just thought, gosh, talk about timing on everything. Like if I had not just, 2 days before that asked for help, I would have gotten fired from my job and had my car that I was living out of and had all my belongings in gone. So it for like that was a huge like moment of, oh my God, like there is I wasn't grateful at the time. I was mad, I was embarrassed, and I couldn't believe I let my life get to that point. But now looking back on it, I'm like, I thank God that like I had asked for help those 2 days before that, because I don't know what I would have done if that situation would have been different. So yeah.
So let's talk about your rehab experience. How was that?
My rehab, I was in rehab for not nine for 3 months, so almost 90 days. And when I went, it was a all women's, only women group, and it was considered like intensive outpatient. So some of the people that came were living at home and then coming for group during the day. And then I said, absolutely not. I'm not living at my parents' house. So I stayed at, they had what was considered a cottage. It was like a cabin type thing that the women who were in the program stayed in. But before we got there, could stay there, we had to stay at the one that had like staff 24/7. Like we were on like lockdown and all of that. So we had to prove that we could be okay to go stay at the other place. So after a few weeks, I was able to go there. I made some really great friends in rehab, and actually a couple I still even talk to today. It was hard because you're facing, like, I'm facing all these things that I did not want to face and I didn't want to admit about myself. But because I'm such a, I had been before, like such a, like, perfectionist, I'm like, oh, well, I need to do what they tell me to do. Like, it was kind of weird, but I'm glad that I did. I think the thing that took me the longest in rehab was to be able to say the words, I love myself. Because it was a huge moment, a couple months in, at least a couple months in, where I finally was able to say that, because I didn't. I thought I was a piece of crap. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I personally still struggle with to this day.
Yep.
That's
And
not an easy thing.
yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, I was just saying it's not an easy thing. For you to be able to do that takes a lot of strength and courage.
It's not. It's hard. I mean, it is still hard sometimes today, but there is that moment that I'm just like, yeah, I do love myself. Like, I'm not this bad, terrible person that I am thinking in my head that I am. I'm actually a good person who made some very poor choices, and then, you know, it took over. The drugs took over my life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So once you got out of rehab, was that your last time ever using? Did it take the first time?
It did take the first time for me, but when I got out of rehab, was scared to go like back to my parents. I was scared to go on my own. Like didn't really have much money. Because it was inpatient. It's not like I could go get a job or anything during that time. So that's when I moved up to Naperville, which is like a suburb of Chicago, to what was considered a 3/4 house. So it was a sober living house with, oh gosh, 8 other women. But like there were things like we had to pay rent, we had to have a job, we had to like do these things. Plus we had to have we had our counselor, we had to do so many meetings a week, we had all these things that we had to do with it. And I stayed there for another 9 months. But what it helped me to do was put my recovery first and then put my life in my recovery. Because I think if I would not have done, at least for myself, if I wouldn't have done something like that, I would have just been like, yeah, my sobriety is important. Yep. Meetings are important for me. Yep. Doing these things are important to me. But this came up, so I want to go do that. So it helped me, because I didn't really have much choice living there. It helped me to put those like puzzle pieces back into my life and put my sobriety first. So, and then I moved back here. I had gotten into a relationship with a guy who was also in recovery. Yeah, and I know what they say the first year, but I want to do it my way. I'm different. And he ended up relapsing, and we ended up in a very abusive relationship. So I was like probably 6 years into my recovery, and finally I'm like, yep, can't do this anymore. So it wasn't about being perfect anymore. It was just about like making sure I'm taking care of myself to do it. And I finally am like, yep, can't do it anymore. So I had saved up enough money. I went and bought a house to try to like, I'm not going to go rent somewhere because I can go right back to him if I rent something. So I went and bought a house. So I just absolutely had to leave. Like in the time, I thought that's what sounded pretty safe, but it's that like catch guard that I had for myself to be able to do it. And so, yeah.
And how long ago was that? How long have you been sober now?
20 years now.
20 years.
Yep.
It's a long
Yeah,
time.
it is. It is. But there's still moments that I'm like, oh, maybe I could have a drink. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I mean, but they're just like fleeting moments, right?
Yeah.
Or, a hot day sitting outside. I'm like, oh yeah, margarita would be nice. And I'm like, wait, what am I thinking? I haven't done that in how long? But um, yeah, in 20, but it's still a process, and it's still not about being perfect. It's about still doing the things that I need to do daily to take care of myself, so I don't want to go back to the drinks or the drugs. So yeah,
Yeah. It's a day by day thing. Absolutely.
absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've had quite the story.
I have. I think
But
we all have a story.
yeah, I say that to everybody. Everyone's got a story to tell, and they're all equally important
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
unique.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So getting towards the end here, did you have anything else you want to talk about? I think you did great. It was an
Oh,
awesome
thank
interview.
you. Thank you. I think mainly that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, for me, I always thought I was different. Like, I could never be that person. So it doesn't matter like what kind of background we have. Like, I mean, drugs can get a hold of any of us.
Yeah.
And so it's just like what we do after we get sober, and, helping other people in that. So I think that's the main thing. Because I think I beat myself up for a long time thinking I'm smarter than this.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about being smart. So yeah, yeah.
All right. So let's wrap this up. I really appreciate you doing the podcast. It means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. That means I was really grateful for that. So thank you.
No, absolutely. I really, once again, have to thank you more than anything. Without that, we wouldn't have a podcast.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, this is a great area. So thank you.
All right, awesome. So sit tight for just 1 second. And
Okay.
for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can also check us out on all social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, we're on it. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There's plenty of free resources as well as free literature there. And also, Addicts Anonymous has a book called Addicts Anonymous Our Stories. It's a collection of different essays I've written on a number of topics, as well as a collection of people's personal stories while fighting addiction and their recovery. That's available on Amazon and Kindle right now, and it'll be available on a bunch more platforms in the future. We're still working on that. So that's all I have for today. I really hope you enjoyed the program, and hopefully we'll catch you next time.